It was an ordinary morning until it wasn't the kind of day that starts quietly, with sunlight slipping through the curtains and the sound of life moving on outside. Unaware that something irreversible has already happened. My brother walked out of the house that day without saying goodbye, without any dramatic words, without a single sign that it would be the last normal moment we'd ever share. At first, we told ourselves the lies people always tell in these moments. He's late, his phone battery must be dead, maybe he needed time alone. Hours turned into days, days into sleepless nights. And every passing second made the silence heavier, louder, more terrifying. The police asked routine questions, neighbors shook their heads, friends offered sympathy, but none of it filled the growing void where my brother's presence used to be. And then the search began, not just through streets and records, but through memories we thought we knew by heart. With every clue uncovered, the image we had of him began to crack, revealing something darker beneath the surface. What we thought was a simple disappearance slowly unraveled into a story of secrets, betrayals, and choices that had been hidden from us all along. This isn't just a story about someone who vanished. It's about how the truth can be more painful than loss itself, how answers don't always bring peace, and how sometimes knowing what really happened changes you forever. Stay with me, because what we discovered about the day my brother disappeared was far worse than death, and once you hear it, you'll understand why our family was never the same again. The last time I saw my brother, he was standing at the edge of the bus stop, backpack slung over one shoulder, smiling like he always did when he didn't want us to worry. The sky was pale grey, heavy with the kind of silence that feels wrong even before something bad happens. He hugged our mother longer than usual, whispered something into her ear that made her laugh, then turned to me. "I'll be back before you know it," he said. Those were his exact words. I remember them because I repeated them to myself for weeks afterward, like a prayer that refused to work. That night, his phone went unanswered. The next morning, it went straight to voicemail. By evening, fear had settled into our house like a thick fog. His bed was untouched. His shoes were still by the door. And yet, my brother was gone. We filed a missing person report, convinced something terrible had happened, but not once did we imagine that the truth would be darker than death itself. Days turned into weeks. Posters with his face appeared on street poles, grocery store windows, and bus stations. Every phone call made our hearts race. Every knock at the door felt like the end of the world. The police asked the same questions again and again: friends, enemies, debts. Habits. My brother had always been quiet, hard-working. Careful. He didn't drink much. He didn't fight. He didn't disappear. Still, subtle cracks began to show in the image we thought we knew. A co-worker mentioned he'd been nervous lately. A neighbor said he'd seen him arguing with someone in a car late one night. His laptop, which we finally unlocked, revealed emails he'd never talked about, messages filled with coded language, vague threats, and a single recurring word that made my stomach drop every time I read it: delivery. When I showed the emails to the police, their expressions changed. Not fear, not surprise, recognition. That was when I realized my brother hadn't just vanished, he'd stepped into something dangerous, and it had swallowed him whole. The truth began to unravel slowly, cruelly. The police finally admitted they believed my brother had been involved with people who didn't exist on any public record. Men who didn't leave fingerprints. Men who didn't forgive mistakes. He hadn't been a criminal in the way movies show it. He hadn't been violent or greedy. He'd been desperate. Bills. Loans. A promise he thought he could handle just once. One delivery. One favor. That was all it took. According to what the police uncovered, the night he disappeared, the deal went wrong. Not wrong enough to kill him, but wrong enough to make him disappear forever. Witnesses placed him at an abandoned warehouse outside the city. No body was found. No blood. Just his broken phone and a watch he never took off. The officers told us that sometimes people are kept alive for reasons worse than death. For leverage. For silence. For punishment. That sentence destroyed something inside me that never healed, because death would have meant an ending. This meant endless imagining. Months later, long after the search was officially suspended, we received something in the mail, no return address. Inside was a single photograph. My brother was in it, alive, older, thinner. His eyes were different, empty in a way I still see in my nightmares. Written on the back, in handwriting I didn't recognize, were 5 words: "Stop asking questions. He breathes." That was the moment hope became torture. We couldn't tell anyone. The police warned us that pushing further could cost his life, so we lived in silence, celebrating birthdays without him, setting an extra plate at dinner like fools who believed pretending could bring him home. Every year, I imagined him somewhere dark, counting days that no longer mattered, paying for a mistake he never meant to make. People say the worst thing is losing someone you love. They're wrong. The worst thing is knowing they're out there, and knowing you'll never be allowed to save them. The truth didn't come with relief. It came like a quiet, final blow, the kind that leaves you standing, but hollow inside. I thought knowing would bring peace, but some answers don't heal, they scar. My brother didn't. He just disappeared from our lives that day. He disappeared from who we used to be, and even now, as I look back on every memory, every laugh, every argument we never resolved, I realize some goodbyes don't happen in person, they happen in silence. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you've lost, someone you still wonder about late at night, then you're not alone. Stories like this are told so we remember, so we feel, and so we don't let silence bury the truth again. If you want more emotional, true-to-life stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who understands the weight of unanswered questions. Your support keeps these stories alive, and sometimes that's the only way the lost are ever found.